So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, before we begin the event, we can just start with the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha for some barakah, as well as so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ease our understanding of whatever knowledge we're going to gain over the next few weeks, inshallah ta'ala. So, Al-Fatiha. So we also like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the opportunity that He has given us to actually seek for knowledge. Although that we are not able to meet physically, we are given the opportunity to meet virtually and learn more about the Fiqh Muamalat online on this application through Zoom. So I'll just explain and give an introduction of myself first before we carry on. So actually, my name is Wafiq. I'm from SMU Islamic Business and Finance Society, and I'm actually a year 2 student in the School of Business. So I'll be the one moderating the whole series, which will last for 6 weeks. So just to give you guys an idea, this is actually a Fiqh Muamalat series, which will last from the 18th of September, which is today, all the way until the 30th of October. And we'll be touching on a couple of things like the role of fiqh in Islamic finance, takafu, Islamic social finance, Islamic fintech. So it's going to be a range of topics. So before I begin, right, I'll actually like to tell you all like the links to sign up is going to be open throughout the 6 weeks. So if you guys got any friends or whatsoever who are interested to join, they can actually just sign up along. They don't have to actually like be here from lesson number 1 all the way to the lesson number 6. So they can just join halfway or whatsoever. And then also on the behalf of SMU MS, Islamic Business and Finance Society, and FSAC, we would actually like to thank every single one of you for putting your time aside to actually join us for this series, because the number of people that sign up is actually way beyond than what we imagined. So we are actually really, really very, very thankful for every single one of you to put time aside. And I really hope the sessions will be beneficial to every single one of us, and we will be able to implement it into our daily lives in a very positive manner, inshallah. So without further ado, I'll just touch on what we're going to touch on for today. So the first lesson for today is actually going to be the role of fiqh in Islamic finance. So we're just going to be the Ustaz will be talking about how to determine whether financial products, contracts, businesses, whether they are in line with the Sharia law, and basically what we are allowed to do and what we cannot do, and how the whole concept of contract works in Islam. So before I will pass the time over to the Ustaz, let me just give you guys a rough introduction of the Ustaz himself. So actually Ustaz Muhammad Nuzaihan bin Hamdan joined CIMB in 2007 under the Complete Bankers program as an associate. So before that, he was actually an executive assistant finance education Da'wah division at the MCAS, the Muslim Converts Association of Singapore. And he's an accredited Asatiza certified by MUIS as well as the Asatiza Recognition Board, and teaches Fiqh Muamalat at Bergas, and is actually a consultant Asatiza and Sharia and provides Sharia advisory services for Bergas Investment Holdings. So his involvement in notable deals in Singapore include sukuk issuances by the Islamic Religious Council of Singapore, which is MUIS, Sabana REITs, City Development Limited, and growing CIMB Bank Berhad's Islamic financing and deposit to reach SGD $2 billion, which clients include the government-linked entities, the Malay Muslim organizations, as well as the mosques. So he's actually, he also holds a Master of Arts with distinction in Islamic Business, Banking, Finance, and Management from Loughborough University, United Kingdom. Apologies if I pronounced it wrongly. And he also has a degree in the Sharia Islamic Business and Islamic Studies and Jurisprudence from the University of Kuwait, which is in Kuwait. So without further ado, I'd actually like to pass the time on to the Ustaz to carry on from here so that we can start. So, I would like to add, so if you guys have any questions or whatsoever, right, you guys can actually just send in the the questions you guys have into a private message to me on the Zoom chat. I won't be replying my WhatsApp. So you have to send the private message to me, the Zoom chat, and then later at about 5:10, we'll give about 20 minutes for the Ustaz to answer respective questions. We will moderate it and we will answer a couple of questions. Ustaz will take a couple of questions that you guys have queries on or whatsoever. And so without further ado, I would like to pass the time on to Ustaz Nuzaihan Hamdan to take over from here. Bismillah, Ustaz. I'll just stop sharing my screen, Ustaz, so you can take over to share your screen.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, sorry. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma shrah sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahla wa anta taj'al hazana idza syi'ta sahla. Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam la tadkhulul jannata hatta tu'minu wa la tu'minu hatta tahabbu. Aw la adullukum idza fa'altumuhu tahabbtum fi salama bainakum fa aqulu assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Good afternoon everyone, and alhamdulillah, hopefully in this Friday afternoon we'll be having the opportunity to discuss and share valuable knowledge, inshallah. Okay, I'm still sorting out how I'm supposed to screen share. Give me a moment, yeah.
Ustaz, at the bottom of your screen, you can see this button, a green button on the toolbar. Yeah, share screen again. Yeah,
all right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Okay, so as a start, I would like to thank SMU by the way, Fiqh, and his team, as well as Progress FSAC for extending the invite so that we can have this session today, inshallah. And by the way, mentioned earlier, it's a class, so and he's given me at least 1 hour to talk to myself because it's quite virtual. Inshallah, and the topic given to me, role of faith in Islamic finance, because I noticed that the participants are quite varied, from tertiary students all the way to working adults, and I think working and from Singapore and overseas as well. So I try to manage the expectation that how it will proceed is that it is as such where when you talk about role of fiqh and the rulings in Islamic finance, there's a few components, and here I think for today we will talking from both our layman perspective as well as from the so-called experts, Sharia advisors perspective, right? Because these two segments play a vital role in determining whether a particular transaction is actually permissible or otherwise. Okay, so for a start, disclaimer, because along the way I will share and some names and so forth, right? And some stories maybe. So if any of us think that, hey, Ustaz Zahid invest in this, so we should invest. So it will be at your own accord, because I'll share whatever limited knowledge that I have. So, and again, like I mentioned earlier, to manage expectation. So hopefully we can get something from today's session, inshallah. So the agenda is Sharia and Fiqh, the importance of Fiqh Muamalat, okay. Maqasid, buying and selling, the standard Sharia regulatory and contemporary issues. So I will actually boil down towards the Singapore context and how, especially the role of fiqh and how fiqh is important in our daily life, especially for us students of knowledge in that sense. So first and foremost, I always start as Islam is a way of life, because Islam encompasses every segment of our life. The moment we open our eyes, there's a dua, and there's salat, subuh, and so forth, and then all the way up to where we sleep. So the verse that states that وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَإِنْسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, for Allah doesn't create the humans and the jinn except to ibadah to Him. All right. So, and we practice Islam not only in certain aspect of our life, but in all aspect of life. So technically, Islam is our life. So a very easy example for that is, say for example, being in Singapore, for example, when we go out to eat, it's either we go to somewhere with a Muiz logo or owned by a Muslim. and we eat from there, right? So why? Because we are what we eat, for example, and that is how we gain our knowledge, right? Our forefathers, our parents, or tell, hey, when you Wafiq, Nazir, when you go out, make sure you eat halal. If I'm not cooking, you go outside, make sure there's halal. McDonald's halal, okay? Don't eat somewhere that is not permissible. Why? Or because we are what we eat, right? Then later for 40 days, your ibadah will not be accepted. Okay, so and today we're not talking about riba, but for example, interest, right? The main reason why it becomes so widely used is because they dissect it from religion, and knowing that all religion forbids interest. No religion says interest is halal, but because they say business is business, so that is where they start to lose the religion, they start to lose God, and then they say, oh, business is business, and we hear that term a lot. So we say business is business, so it's dissect. So that's why they come out with a lot of other religions like Scientology and so forth, where they say that this is science and this is not religion and so forth. So being a Muslim, Islam is a way of life. Okay. The next slide shows about the relationship of Sharia, which is our religion, and akhlaq, fiqh, and aqidah. So you can see from the dark blue boxes, from fiqh comes down to ibadat, and then it also have muamalat. What is ibadat? Ibadat is a man to God relationship, and ibadat is what we know as part of it as rukun Islam lah, right? Your 5 pillars of Islam, your shahada, your salat, your zakat, your hajj, and your fasting. All right. And the difference between ibadat and muamalah or transactions, which is the man-to-man relationship, is that the ruling is so-called static in ibadat. All right. So, but it's not the case in muamalah. That's why the basic knowledge that we need to understand is that in muamalah, generally is permissibility, and the ruling, the hukum is halal or mubah, permissibility, unless there's a so-called verse or any notation that says that it's not permissible. And for ibadat, it's the other way around, because it's static, right? I give an example. So when we do our subuh prayer, right, there's only 2 units, correct? Does anyone here, I think there's, how many people are there here? About 86 of us here. Is there anyone who does solat subuh 3 units? Because the more units, the better, mah. Right? It doesn't. You don't do that, right? Because it's static, it's 2. You don't do more, you don't do less. Or someone say, oh, I do 1 only, so tomorrow I do 3. Right? Nobody does that. Why? Because it's static. So that is ibadat. Or for example, someone say, hey, I don't want to fast in the month of Ramadan, I want to fast in the month of Shawwal. Okay? So nobody does that. Okay? Because it's static. So that's ibadat. So the ruling is there. Whereas in muamalah, it's permissibility. So that's why it's very important in transactions to actually know the role of fiqh. Even us as individual, we need to know, because why we do this on a daily basis. I will touch on that in the later slides. Okay. So what is Sharia? Sharia consists all forms of practical actions by a Muslim manifesting his faith and belief. And fiqh is the detailed interpretation of the rulings pertaining to human conduct. Okay, and then why do we need to understand fiqh? So the verse 122 from Surah Tawbah says that, and is it not for the believers to go forth all at once? For they should be separate from every division of them, a group remaining to obtain understanding in the religion, and warn their people when they return to them, and they might be cautious. Okay, and the Rasul SAW said, whomsoever Allah wishes to show goodness, He gives him understanding of the religion. So that's why it's important to know the religion, so that we know who or what is the ruling behind all of our actions. Okay. So this is, I think, for your reading pleasure. So you know the classification of fiqh. Okay, so you have your ibadat. Okay, your, like we mentioned earlier, your prayer, your zakat, and then you have your muamalat, the contracts, your property, your business organizations, and then your munakahat. Okay, so there's a smelling arrow, the inheritance and guardianship, and so jinayat. These are some examples of the muamalat. So the importance of fiqh. Okay, and I like to use this hadith because it shows the importance of fiqh in our daily life. It says here, riwayat At-Tirmizi, number 2416, it says, La tazulu qadama ibn Adam yawmul qiyamah min indi rabbi hatta yus'al al-khams. An umri fima afnah, wa an shababi fima ablah, wa an mali min aina iktasabahu, wa fima anfaqahu, wa madha amila fima alim. Okay, so to translate, in the day of the hereafter, right, the two legs of Bani Adam, which is us human, will not move unless he is asked of 5 items, 5 questions. Of his age, what has he done with his age? That's number 1. Number 2, of his young age, shabab. Shabab means during your young days lah. What have you filled it in with? What have you done with it? Okay, and that's the second. The third and the fourth, wa an malihi, and of your wealth. All right. Min aina iktasabahu, from where has he gotten his wealth from? Wa fima anfaqahu, and where did he spend the wealth on? Okay. And the last one, wa maza amila fima alim, and what has he done with the knowledge that he has learned and seeked? Okay. So you can see the importance here. It says that out of 5, 2 questions are related to your wealth, which is muamalat, your transactions, right? And it's where your money comes from and where does it goes to, right? So it's in and out lah. It's not just, if some of us accounting, in out at the balance sheet and so forth. So it's not only one way in, it's also in and out as well. So you need to be wary of that. And then riwayat At-Tirmizi states here, la bay'a fi suqina illa man qad tafaqaha fi din. This one happened during the time of the Prophet SAW, when they set up in Yathrib or in the old Medina, a market. So they were asking around, cannot be everybody. I mean, like, if you want to be a soccer player, you need to have a certain distance. You know how to kick the ball, you know how to hit the ball, you know how to pass and so forth. So when they say, we setting up a market place here, who can sell? Who can buy and sell? Cannot be anybody, right? Yeah. So the hadith said that la bay'a, no buying and selling, fi suqina, in this market, illa man qad tafaqaha fi din, except the person knows about the religion. What does it mean? He knows about the buying and selling, the rulings about buying and selling. And last but not least, ya'ti ala nas zaman la yubali rajul min aina akhadha al-mal min halal or min haram. This is one of the hadiths about the end of times, Qiyamah, that there will come a time where a person does not care or cannot distinguish from where the money comes from. Is the source from a permissible source or the source is from an impermissible source? Okay, so that is the sign of a hereafter or akhirah, Yawmul Qiyamah. So you can see from the diagram there, I put there so that you have your Sharia, and underneath Sharia there's fiqh, and underneath fiqh there's muamalah, transactions. So muamalah, amala is you do it, something that you do, and specifically is transactions. Okay. And in a Islamic or Muslim context in Singapore, okay, we are looking at certain wealth management. So it's the full cycle. You look at your income, you look at your deposit, where do you place your deposit? And then in Singapore, you take loans, you take financing, right, for your house, for your car, right, for your education, and then if you have spare cash, spare money, you do investments, and then and you need protection, which is your insurance or takaful. Later, I think in the series, there's Dr. Azman is going to talk about insurance, and then you need to do your zakat, right? So these are all about fiqh muamalat, and how do you go about avoiding riba, which is your interest, avoiding ghara, which is your uncertainties in contract, okay, and maisir, gambling, which is not permissible, and how do you manage debt, right? Debt in Islam, is that permissible in Islam? Yes, but you need to manage it. So how you go about with that? So you need to know fiqh, the rulings. How do you go about? Because I have this story. But the weekend, story a bit. So one of the participants came to me and said, how do we live in Singapore when loan is not permissible? Debt is not permissible. What do you mean by debt is not permissible? Oh, because there's a verse in the Quran that says that debt is not permissible. I said, there is? I'm not aware. Can you share with me? So when he shared with me the verse is actually on riba, interest. It's on the verse. But then I asked him, where from this verse you actually make a ruling or understanding, a judgment saying that so-called loans is not permissible. oh, because all debt got interest, Ustaz. So interest is not permissible. So all debt cannot. Right? So there's a misnomer here, misunderstanding here. Because in the Quran, there's mentioned about Qardul Hasan 8 times. Man yukridullaha qardan hasanan. Qard Hasan, interest-free loan. Qardul Hasan, 8 times is mentioned. So that, what does it mean? It means that, yes, you can do loans, but there's certain requirements to it. And so you want to take loans, okay, you want to have debt, all right, it's permissible in Islam, but you need to know the rulings, how to go about with it, okay? And why is it important to have a peaceful and prosperous society? Because we say it's a man-to-man relationship. How do you transact with one another? Because that's why there's adab. There's adab. There's adab to it. I usually when I talk about adab, usually I talk about mosque lah. Alhamdulillah, nowadays we cannot go to the mosque because we need to so-called book. In Singapore, I don't know whether those in Egypt and so forth are hearing me right now. So in Singapore, we need to book for a slot, right? In order to go for our prayers, even like today our Friday prayers. So previously, when we talk about adab, I mentioned about being just, being fair. Also in Singapore, I said it's about queuing. I think some of us can relate to me when after a particular solat, say for example Friday prayer solat in a masjid, in a mosque, and you go and that mosque has a canteen or eatery, right? And then you want to buy your curry puff. Do you see any queues there? We don't see any queues, right? Everybody is just jumping on each other and then just holding out the curry puff on the left hand and throwing out the cash in the right hand and then telling the seller, hey, I buy this one, this much, this is the payment, right? Nobody queue, it's mayhem, right? So you need to, and then if you take something and then you go back, it's like, hey, what's going on? Or like someone is after the Hajar Aswad. Oh, no, they're just buying curry puff. Like, oh, how come they're not queuing? They're just like jumping all over each other, right? And then you have some pakcik, some elderly, right? After they walk a few steps, they realize, oh, alamak, I took wrongly lah. I want to buy potato. This one is meat. I cannot eat meat. Then he turns around and say, alamak, there's a crowd there. I cannot change it. Whether you shortchange the seller or not, you also don't know, right? It might be a different pricing, right? So that's the importance, the adab you need to know as well when you buy and sell. So to ensure all economic activity are based on Islamic principle, fair and just, it's clear. It's clear. No uncertainty. Oh, this one usually we do at Bazaar Ramadan. Bazaar Ramadan also don't have, right? Usually when you buy something, saya beli, I buy, I sell. It's very clear. I sell for $10, I buy for $10, for example. Helping each other. Okay. Later on, when you have the opportunity, when you learn about buying and selling more deeper, all right. I will touch later on, but just a bit, where the goal of buying and selling is not to make profit. The goal of buying and selling is actually, if you look at the definition later on, then you know it's not about profit. It's about helping each other, share and care, protecting the rights of others. How do you protect? So, for example, someone buys something from you. You as a seller, you need to make sure the item is delivered. Right? A lot of things happen nowadays that you deliver, someone buys from you from Carousel, you deliver, and then hilang, disappear. Then the buyer say, hey, your barang, your item never reach. No, cannot. I show you picture already. What I put inside the letterbox or so forth. Right? You want to complain to the post office, no? Don't complain to me. All right? So you are not a responsible seller. Right? You need to protect their rights, the buyers as well. Right? They are paying you, they paid you. So you need to make sure that the item is delivered. Okay? So that's why it's important. So we do this on a daily basis lah. The role of FAC, we do this on a daily basis. Your ERP, buying online. This one also very cute. The tapping. Some of us use public transportation, right? So you tap. On the counter and so forth. So I asked this question to my progress students. Do you know why you tap not? A lot of answers. Some of them answer and say, Ustaz, because everybody does it. So if you don't do, then kena saman. So we do it. So yeah, correct. But why? Besides that, from a religion point of view, why? You're paying for a service. Right? You're paying for a particular service. And we don't realize that. Why? Because we just follow. We don't actually look at, oh, this is a service provided by SMRT, so we are paying them for the service. So that's why we tag. Buying of the house, and parking, you pay to the car park, and also you deal with each other lah. So technically you do it on a daily basis, regardless. On Fiqh Muamalat. So that's why it's very, very important for us to know how to go about. Okay. And then next is the Maqasid Sharia. Okay, the objective of the Sharia. Okay, is not directly related to fiqh, but it's important. Why? Because when we come to a certain ruling, especially for a Singapore context, or any other country, I mean, maybe some of our colleagues here are in Egypt, or some of them are in Jordan and so forth. From a Singapore context, right, when you come to a certain fatwa, right, or when you come to a certain rulings, you need to have a holistic picture so that people do not misunderstand why the ruling is as such. Okay, so you also need to consider not only the ruling, all right, so before coming to the ruling, you also need to consider the objective of the Sharia. Okay? Because the objective of the Sharia is what? Is to protect the interests of mankind, and also realize the public benefit. Sometimes we actually ask, how come they come up with this kind of fatwa? Personally, you might disagree, but you need to understand where the fatwa comes from which angle, and what kind of information that they digest the fatwa. Okay. So there's 5 categories of maqasid. So there's about religion, your deen, your life, your intellect, your lineage, or your wealth. And for each of these 5 items, the objective of Sharia, there's 3 levels: your necessity, your needs, your daruriyat, and then your wants, your hajiyat, okay, and then your tahsiniyat, your beautification. Okay. And most of the time, usually the most famous is about eating khinzir. I don't know whether you all heard about it. I think those who go to NS and whatnot, you might have heard of it. Like, you go to a particular place, you are stuck in a particular place, right? There's nothing else to eat. You look around, you only find khinzir. Okay, you only find khinzir. Can you consume the khinzir? Can you consume the khinzir? Can. Why? Because it becomes a necessity to protect your life, right? In order for you to live, right? But can we eat the khinzir as a whole? You catch the khinzir, right? And then I don't know whether you need to, how you slaughter a khinzir. I never slaughter a khinzir before. So you slaughter the khinzir, right? And then you go and do a roasted khinzir and whatnot, right? And then you eat until finish. Why you finish? Oh, if not finish, then membazir. You don't read the Quran. In membazirin ikhwan syayatin. Those who membazir is the friend of shaitan. So we don't membazir. We have a roasted khinzir. We finish everything. No, that's not the ruling, right? The understanding is that yes, you can eat the khinzir, but hadal ramak. Hadal ramak means what? Hadal ramak means that you can eat it to a certain extent that you know that you can live, right? So technically, it's like a fine dining. You eat a bit of fine dining, you go fine dining. The portion is very small, right? So that is the famous story for the riyad, the necessity or the needs. So the function of wealth. What is the need? Okay, the need for wealth, because we're talking about muamalat here. We're not talking about your life, your khinzir and whatnot. So the obligation to use the wealth wisely and forbids wastage. And the importance to protect. How you protect your wealth. All right. Always remember this concept of you are going to be questionable of where the money comes from and where it goes. So you need to know not to waste your money. You need to protect your wealth, and the obligation to invest. If you look at the so-called ruling behind zakat, why is the rationale behind zakat? Why is there zakat in Islam? Yes, people will say, oh, it's because to clear our debt, it's because so that membersihkan harta and so forth. But some of them do not realize that when you do that, you actually circulate. The money is circulated, right? So you give percentage. Recently in Singapore, there's a voucher, right, Wafiq? I think about $100, right, for tourism or something, right? Right. Yeah. So why is that? It's because they want to get us to spend so that the money rolls. All right. That's why zakat. So that's why it's important to invest. All right. And then under hajiat, your wants, your depending lah, your luxury and your customization and so forth. Your car, whether it's a need or a want, that one is subjective. A lot of the financial advisor will say, oh, no need car lah, Singapore accessible. You can just Grab, you can just Gojek and so forth. All right, it depends on the individual itself. And then tahsiniat, maybe last time is Android, iPhone, but now I think the first thing that we wake up in the morning, we look at our IG. So like maybe myself, I talk about myself. I wake up in the morning, I watch CIG. Who has Manchester United side? Nobody. Very sad. All right. Then you recite, Alhamdulillahillazi ahyana ba'dama amatana wa ilayhin nusyur. That one is problematic. So you should actually recite the doa first before doing anything else lah. So somewhat the Android, iPhone, all those instead of tahsiniat maybe become our needs, hajiat, or daruriyat. You can't live without it. And renovation and decoration. Okay, so why I'm sharing this, because you will need to understand, because it's going to be subjective from one individual to another in terms of deciding on a particular ruling. I'm not sure whether later Dr. Azman will touch on the insurance part. Say, for example, is it okay to take insurance in Singapore context because there's no takafu, what kind of insurance is permissible and so forth. So it's subjective from one individual to another. All right, buying and selling. Okay, looking at the watch here. So buying and selling is an exchange of something with something else lah. And it's a declaration of agreement where there is an exchange of an asset with another asset that is lasting. Litakbid. So mubadatul mal bil mal, litakbid. Asset, it doesn't say cash for cash. It says mal, asset, because from one community to another community, one country to another country, an asset might differ, right? Maybe in Singapore, I don't know what's an asset. Maybe laptop is an asset. I don't know. Maybe webcam is an asset, right? In another country, something else might be an asset. So technically, an asset, and then there's a change, litabit forever. So the ownership transfers from one individual to another individual forever. It's like your nikah lah, munakahat, wedding. You cannot nikah, I get married to you for 45 days lah. After 45 days, if not satisfactory, we go our own ways lah. Cannot do. Doesn't apply. So that's why the same applies to your buying and selling. So it's an ownership. So that's why in the beginning of Islam, when there's buying and selling, Allah has permitted buying and selling and forbidden interest. Usually, it's barter trading. So one Sahabi have a particular date, and then the other one have flour, for example. So they exchange. And if you realize from the definition, there's nothing about making profits. Okay. So that is something that is very important for us to understand. Yes, nowadays it's important to make profit, but it shouldn't be the core so-called reasons why you go into business lah. Alright. Inshallah, the moment that you set your intentions right, inshallah, Allah will guide you. Right, the profit will come in automatically. Afterwards. Okay. So according to the original method of ruling, muamalah is permissible, like I mentioned earlier. Also fil muamalah al-ibaha, madalla dalil ala hurmatihi, unless there's a provision that prohibits it. Okay, so that's why it's very important to understand. Why? Because it's very wide. A lot of things can be done, but you need to know the rules. Otherwise, you might go astray. So when you do a transaction, it becomes impermissible. All right. So you need to avoid the prohibition. So interest, you need to avoid. Uncertainty in context, you need to avoid. Maisir, gambling, you need to avoid. Producing and selling goods that are of no value. No value to a Muslim, for example. So for example, I get to know brother Wafiq has moved to a new house. Brother Wafiq, I got an extra so-called cross lah. You know the salib, right? The cross, right? I got extra. Do you want not? Somewhat when I was hospitalized, they give it to me lah. I got extra, you want to put in your house, right? I sell to you lah. I bought some joystick, you know, the one that the non-Muslims or the believers of other religion does, right? I got spare, you want to buy? Like I pass it to you, I sell it to you. Okay, you can't do that. Why? Because it's no benefit to a Muslim. Or producing and selling non-halal goods, right? For Muslims, non-halal, right? So you sell khinzir, you sell dogs, for example, or you sell liquor, right? Hey, what business are you in? I'm doing liquor. How come are you not Muslim? I'm Muslim, but you're selling what? Liquor. Why? Liquor business is booming, right? One bottle I can sell, I don't know how much. Sorry, I don't know. One bottle maybe $13, right? If I sell a normal Anugerah water, is only $2. Right, so there's $11 margin. Might as well I sell liquor. No, you cannot. You cannot. As a Muslim, you cannot do that. Okay, and there's rules to be observed. The essential elements, which is the rukun, and the necessary conditions, and the syarat. The syarat. Okay, so I will not dwell on that lah, because this is not the place and time. And it will take a whole so-called series to explain on that. So I just want to emphasize, if we understand the buying and selling, the essential elements, the necessary conditions, this is where the role of faith comes in. Then during COVID, you become hungry and then you order online. All right. I think Brother Wafiq also order online, Brother Nazir and so forth. Order online, order food lah, Food Panda, order online. So does ordering food online satisfy the necessary conditions and essential elements of buying and selling from a Muslim perspective? Right, so you need to know. So one of the requirement is that when you want to sell something, for example, one of the essential elements, the rukun, is the item, and the item must be halal lah, right? And it must be there. It must be wujud, mesti ada. It's already there, right? You cannot sell something that is not there yet, right? So when you buy online, you cannot see. Regardless of what you buy online, like you buy food, you buy items, right? It might not be there at the point of buying online. But so can we buy it online? Does it go against the essential element and necessary condition of Islam? All right. And to make it more complicated, we buy using credit card. Right, you tie, for example, your GrabPay or Fashion Belay lah, your Zalora, your Shopee, recently the 9 September shopping, and so forth. You tie it to your credit card, for example, and then you buy. Do we need to, say for example, you buy food, do we need to, is it okay when the food arrives, we eat the food, or we need to pay off settle the bills first before we pay, because it's a credit card, and credit card is a debt because we are in debt to the bank, because the bank are paying. Right? So these are all the rulings that we need to understand. So not to leave it hanging, right? The answer is, the short answer is that is it okay to do online? Yes, it's fine, right? As long as the specifics are there. Is it okay to use credit card? In a Singapore context, we need to relook. It might be permissible, although a lot of rulings said that it's not permissible. Okay, and according to so-called jurisdictic view, if you transact using credit card, is a spot transaction, i.e., when you buy a food using credit card, you can actually eat it already. No need to go and wait for your monthly settlement to pay first before you eat the food. Otherwise, basi already lah, cannot eat. You order Food Panda, use credit card, nasi lemak, the nasi lemak comes after 30 minutes, then you have to wait for your bill haven't settled, then you have to wait, the bill cycle is like next week. Then your nasi lemak do what? Right? So you have to, it's okay to use credit card. So that's where I'm trying to get at in terms of the rulings, understanding the faith. So I have about 15 minutes. All right. So, and then you have your contemporary issues, buying and selling. I think some of you have this type, some of you might not have. I have a bad habit of updating a bit of my slide before I present. So when you sell something, you must have ownership. So if you want to sell a helmet, you must own the helmet first. I cannot go to Wafiq, take his spectacle and sell to you. I sell to you this because it doesn't belong to me. All right. So I need to own something. That item I must own before I can sell. All right. So which leads to the question: if someone sells the moon, the land on the moon, like I'm flashing right now, is it okay or not to buy? Someone so-called what you call that, celebrating their 100th-day anniversary. So being romantic, say Nafisa, I want to give you the moon for you. On our 100th-day anniversary, I want to give you the moon. You cannot buy the moon. The moon doesn't belong to you. Oh no, I can buy. See, this website, premium deluxe 10 I can buy, I can give it to you, and you can keep, and you own a land on the moon. So if anything happens on earth, you can go to the moon and stay there. Okay, so if you know the rulings, you know the answer. This is not permissible lah, cannot, because you don't own. You are selling, but you don't own the property. Okay, so I give some examples, and then this one is droplet. I don't know whether any of us in Singapore heard of it before. Wafiq, you heard of this droplet before? No. So a bit of a story. So long story short, droplet is because some of us take public transportation like Grab, right, and Gojek and so forth. So when it rains, there's a price surge. Okay, I think some of us might experience that. So what happens is that you buy this droplet, which is technically an insurance scheme. Say for example, you look at the weather forecast and it says that on 18, 19, and 20 September it's going to rain. Okay, so I give an example, 20, 21, 20, okay, it's going to rain, for example, right? So you buy this policy. Okay, you buy this policy. After you buy and it rains, the price surge, you take the Grab, you can claim up to $60 per day, or 60, it cover up to 60% of your fare. Okay, so what happened was that I took these screenshots. I shared with my colleagues in Malaysia, right? Because Malaysia is the Islamic hub about Islamic finance and so on, right? So they were like going to and fro, ding dong, and then they came back and said, Zain, we don't have this in Malaysia. Okay, can you share with me what do you think the ruling should be? I think this is bid'ah, Zain. This is bid'ah. This is something new, evolution. We've never seen this, so we don't know what the ruling is. So what I'm trying to get from this example is that first you want to know your rulings, basic, all right, and then you know what you do on a daily basis. You're buying online, and at the same time, these items they evolve, all right, they evolve. So when it evolves, and you want to, as a consumer, as a layman, people like myself and yourself, you want to purchase this, say for example, droplet, would it be permissible or not? Right? So it evolves. So that's why the role of fiqh in Islamic finance in our life is very, very important. Okay, this one I won't answer. I think I let Dr. Azman on this session. Just take note of our fiqh, so Dr. Azman can answer whether this is permissible or not. Okay. Okay, standard Sharia regulatory requirement. Okay, so I'm sharing this so that we know that in a Singapore context, okay, there's guideline issued by the authority, i.e. Monetary Authority of Singapore, talking about the rulings of fiqh. If you want to come up with a certain product, Islamic product in Singapore, whether it's under Islamic finance, whether it's under Sky in Singapore, we need to comply with this. And then Malaysia also issue some so-called rules regulations about Islamic contracts, and how you can benefit from them, how you want to, when you want to do contract, how you and it is widely so-called publicly accessible, so anyone of us can know, because maybe I give an example. A lot of Singaporeans, like the older generation and the pioneer generation, likes to play snowman. I don't know what it's called in English. So Ustaz Syarah, you know what is snowman in English? I don't know what is it called in English. So they have this snowman and they want to play, right? Which is like every month a particular group pay a certain amount of money, and if in a particular month it's my turn, I get the whole amount lah, and it goes on to the next person and so forth, right? So how do you tighten that contract? because a lot, even if anyone watched Dari Tok Kadi, right, they saw that one of the episodes where one of the ladies want to get married, but the money is not there yet because the mother was playing snowman, and she didn't get the money. Why? Because one of the members actually ran away with the money. All right. So this happened in Singapore. Okay. So you need to be very mindful about that when you talk about contracts. Okay. Again, this I'm sharing because it's easily accessible to everyone. Securities Commission. Okay. Earlier we talked about investment. So Securities Commission of Malaysia. All right. They also have a certain ruling how to come about with a ruling in terms of if you can invest in a particular stock and so forth. Like my friend Ustaz Kamal Mukhtar, he does a lot of talks on how to buy REITs, how to do investments, and this kind of stocks you have, and you can have a better understanding how do they rule a particular stock as permissible, right? A lot of people buy shares. Ustaz, then they ask, Ustaz, is it okay to buy shares? Why? Because there's uncertainty. Why? Because the price goes up and down. Right? Sometimes the price is like that, and then the next thing the price goes down and so forth. So can we buy? Ustaz, can we buy the shares of Singtel? Why? Because Singtel got so-called R21, got they have MTV, which Islam does not promote. Right? So is it okay to buy stocks with Singtel? Right? So that's why it's good to understand the rulings, okay? And then Shariah standards by IOFI. Excuse me, sorry. So I'm sharing this so that everybody is aware lah. There's such ruling. Okay, so that is more towards the individual level, at our level. How do we manage? And then some might ask, Ustaz, this kind of rulings, right? Who give the rulings, and what give them the right to give us these rulings? All right. So you have experts in the fields lah, who has done this for over years and years and years. I know like the like of I know like Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar personally, right? He's my mentor. Okay, I look up to him. He's done it for the longest time. I look up to Dr. Aznan Hassan as well, right? And then from overseas, these are the Fiqh Shariah board members. Okay, these are the experts. And I work personally with Sheikh Nizam Yaqubi. He's an expert from Bahrain as well. Okay, so they come up with the rulings, the fatwa. All right, and they have to consider all the things that I shared earlier. So if there's something that is evolving, something that is new in the market, right? So how do you come up with a particular ruling, ijtihad, right? So you need to look whether it's permissible or not. You need to look at the maqasid, whether if they allow this thing to be offered to the mass, will it be good or will it be bad? If it's good, they will allow it. But if it's bad, then they will not allow it, although there's benefit, for example, right? So they have to actually balance all those so-called information that they have within their grabs. Okay, contemporary issues. Okay, this one I want to share. I think we don't have this yet. All right. This is just a point of discussion later on. Maybe among yourself, maybe you can discuss as well. I just open this up for discussion. How it's important to have a understanding of faith. Again, I emphasize on that. So you want to go Umrah, for example, right? Or Haji, but you have insufficient fund. And you have insufficient fund to go to Haji or Umrah, right? Can I go what? Go to the bank and get financing, get a loan, Islamic loan. What do you think? Can we do that in Singapore? Should we do that in Singapore? And it's a common, before COVID, it was a common so-called issue where when one would register for Hajj, for example, right, the waiting time is 15 to 20 years, but in actual fact, it's between 7 to 12 years. So there are cases where because they are not wealth heavy, they didn't start to save their money after registering. What happened was that when it's time for them to register, they didn't have the sufficient fund to finance them going to Hajj, right? So they have to bypass and then have to wait for their turn next time. All right. So that's a loss because you have to wait 7 to 12 years, for example, right? So if you are studying right now, you are 20, you register now, you only go when you are 27. All right. Or if someone is 30 now, they only go when they're 37, for example. Or worse, 12 years, 42. All right. So these are the things that they might be considered, right? In the Singapore context. And then, is forex trading permissible in Islam? So this one I share from the MUIS website, right? They say that it's permissible to a certain extent, and because I always get this question on a daily basis. But just to address a misnomer, a misunderstanding, forex or foreign exchange is baik saraf. In Islam, baik saraf is fine, right? You want to go to Malaysia, you go to where? Money changer, right? You change your money to RM, right? For example, or you want to go overseas, you want to go to Mesir, right? You want to get Egyptian pound, all right? You go to the money changer, you change. That is baik saraf. That is foreign exchange, forex. That's fine. There's no problem with that. Okay. But forex, there's a few types. Okay. Including spot, which is what you do over the counter with money changers, and then there's forwards, there's futures, there's swaps. Okay. So anything beyond spot, there is a different in opinions between the scholars. Okay. So I won't dwell that because time is okay. And then I don't know whether you've heard of this, the halal, kalau in Singapore they say halal toto, right? So in Emirates there's this called Lotto, right? And it's everything you need to know about the UAE's first Shariah Lotto, halal compliant, Toto. So how do you make Toto Shariah compliant? Halal, right? That is another example of point of discussion again to be discussed. Okay, I think this is the last few slides before we can end. So when you talk about coming out with a certain ruling, coming out with a certain fatwa, you first and foremost, these scholars and these experts will actually look at the background, see the background first. Okay? So what's the background of this issue, whether it's permissible or not, why it's being discussed extensively, why people are asking about this, do we need to make a change to these requirements and so forth. So they look at issues arising from previous fatwa. So they look at people, they have a fatwa, they check first whether there's a previous fatwa on the same thing. If there is, then they use it as a reference. But if there isn't, then they will have to come up with a more background checks, more objective. They want to find out. So they will look at the mafasid, whether permissible, whether is doria, or whether it's hajia, or whether it's tasinia, and so forth. And then they look at the consideration. They have to consider a few things, right? Then they will discuss and decide. So that's the process flow that always follow, because I'm involved in the Sharia committee meetings every 6 weeks for the bank, right? So I present some paper and we discuss some papers as well. So these are the background that need to be considered when they're coming up with certain rulings. Okay, so in Singapore, I think I'm giving example about fatwa of joint tenancy. Right, previously there was a different fatwa, and then there's a new fatwa in 2019. So I'm sharing with you fatwa communist considerations. You can go to the website to read it in length. Okay, so what are the considerations? The joint tenancy, whether there's a sharika, what is it in terms of joint tenancy law, right? Because sometimes there are people out there who say that, hey, this one joint tenancy fatwa very troublesome, leceh, but we need to remember when they come up with certain fatwa, they look at public interests, not at individual interests. Okay, that are the things that we need to understand when they come up with a certain ruling. Fatwa nomination on CPF nomination, sorry. Okay, just now was joint tenancy, this one is CPF nomination. So they compare the nomination system for CPF to hibah, the art of giving, the gift. So whether it's the same or not, whether there's khabat, khabat means that you take ownership over it. So because they say CPF nomination, when you give, you cannot take back. So hibah, when you give someone a gift, can you take it back? Malay will say buruk siku. You give, or there's a hadith that say that those who give a gift and take it back, kamasalil kalb, like a dog who vomits and eat its own vomit. Right? But there are certain criteria where it allows for one to actually give a gift and take it back. Alright. So that's why they need to have this comparison. Okay, so CPF nomination is likewise, and then hibah is as such, and so forth, before coming up to a particular ruling. And then the revocable insurance nomination. And then why do you, the objective, the background. So why do you need to talk about this? Because when a Singaporean Muslim dies in Singapore, for example, they leave behind usually these three things: HDB, house, insurance, CPF. That's why the fatwa talks about all these 3 items. Okay, so that's about fatwa. So these are example of how the Sharia pronouncement looks like. Okay, so you have the FSAC pronouncement to atheist, and then you have the CMB, and then there's other pronouncement from Amani as well. Yeah. I think it's a challenge right now because this kind of pronouncement are not easily accessible for one reason or another. And in actual fact, it should be accessible to the public so that to give public certain confidence to a particular product. I think recently there was an uproar, right, in Facebook, I'm not sure, in Singapore, where a particular shop, apparently the owner is not non-Muslim, and then the son takes over the shop, right? And people have been eating there for years and years and years, and then they realize that, oh, the shop is selling food that is not halal, but the ingredient is halal, but the shop is not, the food they prepared maybe it doesn't comply with the book in Salam. Wallahu alam. All right. So if we have this kind of halal certification, it will give confidence to the consumer. So okay, this is something that maybe the entities need to work on. And I take this example from Dr. Bakar's Sharia Life book, okay, where again the evolvement, the evolving, the innovation. You talk about the role of muqawalah, renovation purposes, tawrid, tasmim, fiqh of sketching. Sometimes some of us, I think in architecture kind of design, right? You design, you sketch and whatnot. People see, okay, this one I like, this one I don't like. Then you just go off, right? You don't pay for your sketching, right? Then we need to consider, when you sketch something, it's your effort, your time, so you need to pay for it. Fiqh of maintenance, right? You come up with something, and you need to have a maintenance. How do you go about with that? All right. And then fiqh of standards. You come up with a certain rulings, certain standards. Okay, you need to take care of it. Okay, so these are very important. Okay, so to summarize before we end the session, okay, we talk about Sharia fiqh, the relationship, the importance of muamalat, okay, the maqasid, the buying and selling, the regulatory requirement, and any contemporary issues and that we might face in our normal daily life, for that matter. And I think this topic is important. Yes, I apologize if I might have bored any of us, but hopefully I haven't. But it's very important as a foundation you need to know, because I think in the series there's talk about economics, okay? There's talk about takaful, right? There's talk about social finance. Right. So how do you understand social finance if you don't understand what is fiqh? So you need to understand that. And then Sharia compliant business. How do you determine a business is Sharia compliant? Right? Or the business is halal in Singapore if you do not know the rulings behind that. Right? So you can have a you can have a shop, right, that sells chicken rice. One shop is halal and the other shop is Michelin star, but it's not halal. Right? So will you go as a Muslim, will you go for the Michelin star or you go for the halal store? All right. So there's a choice that we have to make lah. Yeah, it should be easy lah. Technically, you should go to the halal shop lah. Right. But some of us say, oh no, I want to go for the taste, so I want to go to the Michelin star, for example. All right. And then talk about Islamic fintech. Right. Nowadays is the in thing, right, about fintech. Right. So what is Islamic about fintech? What's the ruling? What's the role of fiqh in there? Right, you do your smart contracts, your cryptocurrencies, your blockchain, and so forth, right? So, what are the rulings of fiqh in terms of, for example, I just throw this out. I think the speakers in this session, they will talk about the rulings now. For example, say for example, during the time of the Prophet SAW, they use barter trading, and then they use dinar dirham, gold and silver, all right? But now, do we use gold and silver? No, right? Otherwise, we become like Robin Hood. Everywhere we go, we carry a pouch. We put the gold inside. Hey, how much is this? This is 1 dinar. Come up with gold. We throw the coin. All right. But we use fiat money. So is fiat money permissible in Islam or not? All right. Because there's no. Why? Because it's legal tender. Why? Because it's just intrinsic value, for example. And then we use crypto. Right. So some of the scholars actually divide it. Medium of exchange. They divide into dinar, dirham, gold and silver. fiat money, which is the paper money that we use, and cryptocurrency. Okay, so that's for example. So that's why the core faith is very important. Yeah. So I think I reached towards the end of the session already. I hand it back over to Brother Wafiq.
Okay, shukran. Alhamdulillah, Ustaz, for the wonderful sharing. So to end off, we will just recite Tasbih Kafara as well as Surah An-Nasr, and then we can call it a day. Subhanallah. So we thank every single one of you for gracing the class today, and we hope you guys gain beneficial knowledge. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.